They told you that love would be the answer, that if you opened your heart, gave enough, softened enough, stayed kind, stayed patient, love would meet you there, that the right person would see you, cherish you, stay. But what no one warned you about is that before you ever meet the man who truly sees your soul, you will likely be cracked open by the one who DOES in single quotes T.1. The illusion had to seduce you. This isn't just heartbreak. This is an initiation, a shattering designed, not by fate's cruelty, but by your soul's agreement. Because sometimes, before you remember who you truly are, you must first forget entirely. And there is no more disorienting way to forget yourself than to lose yourself inside someone who cannot hold your depth. There's something hauntingly beautiful about the man who first awakens your longing. He doesn't arrive like a warning. He arrives like a prophecy, like a pull in your chest you can't explain. His voice is a key that fits some ancient lock inside your body. You swear you've known him before, in dreams, in flashes. In the half-remembered ache of your teenage journals, he seems to appear, not from the world, but from your psyche, your myth. And that's exactly why it hurts so much. Because he wasn't the man himself. He was the embodiment of something deeper. The illusion you built as a child to make sense of your emptiness. He carried your unmothered ache, your invisible hunger, your belief that maybe, just maybe, if you became soft enough, desirable enough, spiritual enough, someone would finally choose you. You didn't fall for him. You fell for your own fantasy. And the fantasy was powerful. He said just enough to keep you guessing. He saw just enough of you to make you feel exposed, but never enough to hold you. Never enough to meet you in the places you actually needed to be met. Still, you waited, still. You poured, you read between every line of silence, carved meaning into his absence, interpreted chaos as depth. You made his inconsistency a puzzle to solve, not a red flag to honor. Because walking away from him would mean walking away from the story your wounded self had clung to for years. The illusion had to seduce you. Because it was never about him. It was about the part of you that still believed love had to be earned through suffering. **** 2. Your shadow had to be revealed. You thought you were falling in love, but what you were truly doing was walking into the dark cave of your own unconscious. It's easy to blame him, to say he triggered your anxiety, your fear of abandonment, your unworthiness, but he didn't create those wounds. He simply illuminated them. His presence was a mirror, polished by your longing, held up to every part of you that had gone and loved, and seen, unspoken. In his silence, the orphaned parts of your psyche began to scream. The little girl who was always told she was too emotional. The teenager who tried to become what others wanted just to feel needed. The woman who feared that her truth would make her unlovable. All of them came alive again. Not because he hurt you on purpose, but because your soul recognized that. This was the moment to stop hiding. You watched yourself shrink, apologize for asking, edit your feelings, wait for texts like they were proof of existence. You saw yourself confuse longing with love, suffering with devotion, and somewhere in the middle of the nights you cried yourself to sleep. You realized, this isn't who I came here to be. But you had to see it. You had to live it. Because shadow work isn't just journaling about your fears. It's witnessing yourself betray your own soul in real time and choosing, finally, to stop. This man wasn't just a heartbreak. He was the lantern that lit up your shadow, so you could no longer pretend you didn't see it. *3. The fantasy had to either is a private fairy tale every woman carries. Even if she doesn't speak it aloud. It's not about a prince or a castle. It's about redemption. That one man who will love her so fully, so intuitively, so completely, that every scar will dissolve. that every rejection from childhood, every heartbreak from adolescence, every moment she was overlooked, dismissed, silenced, will finally make sense. He will make it all worth it. You thought he was that man. You wanted him to be that man. You read his presence like a promise. That he was here not just to love you, but to save you, to rewrite the story, to make up for what others could not give. You weren't in love with him. You were in love with what he represented. Hope, completion, rescue. But the fantasy was never sustainable, because no man, no matter how magnetic, can carry the weight of your unlived life, and no love that asks you to abandon yourself to be chosen can ever become sacred. So it cracked, slowly, brutally. You stopped explaining his distance. You stopped romanticizing the chaos. You stopped interpreting the lack of effort as spiritual mystery. And as the illusion crumbled, so did the little girl inside who believed she wasn't worthy of real, grounded, reciprocal love. It had to die, not because you were wrong to believe in love, but because it was time to believe in love that didn't require your disappearance. *4. Your rage had to burn through the spell. No one talks about the rage. We talk about grief, about letting go, about forgiveness. But there comes a moment in every woman's healing where sorrow alone is not enough, where softness fails to cleanse what's been violated, where silence only deepens the wound. And in that moment, something ancient awakens inside her, not to destroy, but to protect. It's rage, holy rage, the kind that doesn't just scream. It sees. You weren't just mourning a man. You were mourning yourself. Every version of you who swallowed her truth just to be loved. Every moment you made yourself smaller so he wouldn't feel threatened. Every time you smiled through his neglect and called it patience. The fury came not from hatred, but from self-betrayal. From years of spiritual bypassing. From the exhaustion of pretending it didn't hurt. And this rage, it wasn't irrational. It was sacred intelligence. It was your nervous system saying, enough. It was your soul reclaiming the parts of you that were still on your knees. It was the fire that melted the spell you were under, the illusion that love meant endurance, that longing meant depth, that suffering meant devotion. You had to burn, because the version of you that could survive without boundaries was never meant to live. *5. The death was necessary for rebirth. You didn't just lose him. You lost the version of yourself who thought she needed him to feel whole, the one who measured her worth through his attention, the one who kept rewriting her boundaries just to stay desirable, the one who mistook over-functioning for love and anxiety for intimacy. And as that version of you began to die, you grieved her. It wasn't just about the man. It was about the identity you built around him, the woman who knew how to love so deeply, but didn't know how to be loved back, the one who turned pain into poetry and called it romance, the one who believed that if she just healed more, fixed more, gave more, she would finally be chosen. But the truth is, she had to die, because the life she built was not rooted in truth. It was rooted in survival, in attachment, in unconscious patterning, and the grief that followed wasn't weakness. It was the ashes of initiation, the dark womb of transformation. From that death, a new woman began to rise, not perfect, not healed overnight, but honest, raw, clear. A woman who no longer bargains for love, who doesn't confuse drama for passion, who doesn't need to be someone else to feel worthy. That woman, she wasn't born from safety. She was forged in heartbreak. She is your rebirth. *6. You had to learn what love is. Not sometimes the most powerful lesson isn't what love is, but what it absolutely is not. You thought love was about trying harder, about fixing, about holding on tighter when it started to slip. You were taught, silently, implicitly, that real love requires entrance, that suffering was a rite of passage. That confusion was part of the magic dot, so you stayed. You tolerated, mixed signals, and called them mystery. You made excuses for emotional distance. You romanticized inconsistency, mistaking it for depth. You called it soul connection, when what it really was trauma reenactment dressed in spiritual language. But slowly, the illusion unraveled. You began to notice how love felt more like a high-end crash than a home, how peace felt boring, because your nervous system was addicted to chaos, how your body knew it wasn't safe, even as your mind made excuses, and you realized this wasn't love, it was longing, it was chemistry rooted in unmet needs, it was trauma bonding. And that revelation, it shattered you, because it meant questioning every story you had ever told yourself about love, every fairy tale you swallowed, every song, every movie, every spiritual meme that made you think that pain was proof of passion. But the death of illusion created space, a new blueprint, a remembering. True love doesn't create confusion. It creates clarity, stillness, safety, a sense of coming home, not to them, but to yourself. Asterisk. 7. He was a mirror, not a Mr. K you spent so long asking, why did this happen to me? But what if the real question was, what was this trying to show me about myself? He wasn't a mistake. He was a mirror, not because he was wise, or evolved, or even safe, but because he reflected exactly what was still unfinished inside of you. He didn't just awaken your love. He awakened your fear, your hunger, your silence. The parts of you that were still waiting for someone else to tell you that you were enough. Through him, you met yourself in the rawest, most painful way. You watched how far you'd go to be chosen. You heard the voice in your head that said, just be a little quieter, a little less emotional, a little easier. You saw the little girl in you offering herself up for crumbs, hoping someone would finally say, you're worth the feast. And it hurt, deeply, because he didn't choose you, or stay, or see the magnitude of your heart. But maybe that was the point. Maybe his role was never to love you the way you dreamed, but to show you the way you had stopped. Loving yourself, he wasn't your future. He was your reflection, one that demanded you look, even when it broke your heart. Asterisk, asterisk 8. This was a soul contract before you came into this life. Before your body took form, there were promises made. Not in words, but in soul language, agreements, forged in the unseen, between two beings who understood what they would awaken in each other, not through comfort, but through contrast, not through happily ever after, but through rupture. He was one of those promises. You didn't recognize it at first. Of course not. Contracts of this kind don't announce themselves. They arrive as magnetism, as aching, as why do I feel like? I've known you forever. What you felt wasn't romantic destiny. It was the soul remembering the agreement. When we meet again, I will help you remember who you are, even if it breaks us both. That's what this was, not karma, not punishment, but precision. He was a vessel, a trigger, a living metaphor. He showed up exactly when your soul needed to awaken, and did exactly what was required to shake you loose from the illusion you'd outgrown. And when the contract fulfilled itself, it collapsed. Not because you failed, not because you were unworthy, but because the medicine had been delivered, the mirror had done its job, and in its breaking, you were handed back to yourself, altered, emptied, and irrevocably closer to truth. This was never about getting love from him. It was about remembering the love that never left you, the one inside your own sacred bones. Asterisk, asterisk 9. You are not broken. You are back home. You called it a failure, a mistake, a weakness. You looked at yourself, the crying, the spiraling, the begging, the nights on the floor, and whispered, "What is wrong with me?" But here's the truth. Nothing is wrong with you. What you were experiencing wasn't collapse. It was transformation. It was the sacred chaos that comes before rebirth. You were never broken. You were becoming. Because real becoming doesn't look graceful. It looks messy. It looks like questioning your worth at 2 a.m., then wiping your tears and still showing up for your day. It looks like setting a boundary and then second-guessing yourself for hours. It looks like grieving a man who couldn't hold your heart and choosing, again and again, not to run back. The version of you that emerged from this was not born from ease. She was forged in fire. She is the woman who now sees red flags not as challenges, but as closure, who no longer apologizes for her emotions, who doesn't chase love, but embodies it, who no longer needs to prove her worth, because she finally feels it in her own skin. You are not. Your lowest moment. You are the one who rose from it. *10. You are ready now, not for him, but for y'all this time. You thought the healing was preparing you for someone else. That one day, when you were finally enough healed, enough calm, enough radiant, he would appear, the one who would finally love you the way you always dreamed. But here's the secret your soul has been whispering all along. You weren't being prepared for a man. You were being prepared for yourself, because you've walked through fire. You've sat in silence with your own ache. You've unclenched your fists from someone who didn't choose you and chose yourself instead. You've shattered the fantasy and stood inside the raw truth of who you are without flinching. And now, you are not waiting anymore, not for someone to validate your beauty, not for someone to choose you before you choose yourself, not for breadcrumbs or mixed signals or promises that never take form. You are no longer willing to perform, or please, or contort. You are ready, ready to walk in your fullness, ready to trust your intuition, ready to say no, not out of fear, but out of reverence for your own energy. You are not seeking love from a place of lack anymore. You are offering love from a place of overflow, and if love finds you again, it will meet a woman who has already come home to herself. Asterisk, you thought you were healing from heartbreak, but you were returning to your temple. You were brushing dust off your own altar, because what broke you was never meant to keep you. It was meant to free you. The man who couldn't meet you was a messenger in disguise. He didn't speak love, but he taught you the language of self-reclamation, of boundaries etched in fire, of silence turned into song. You went to war for his affection and came back carrying only your own name. And now, you are no longer a woman waiting at the threshold. You are the doorway. No longer searching for home in someone else's arms. You are the home, the sanctuary, the storm, the stillness after, because the sacred doesn't always arrive as softness. Sometimes it arrives as endings, as collapse, as the refusal to abandon yourself one more time. And maybe this is the real initiation, not into perfect healing, but into holy remembrance that you are never too much, never not enough, never broken, only breaking open. So come, step into your sovereignty. Not because he finally saw your worth, but because you did. You are not the woman who is left behind. You are the woman who rose. Asterisk. A sacred invitation if these words stirred something in you, not just in your mind, but in your body. In that quiet place behind your ribs that still aches when you remember the one who couldn't stay. Then know this, you are not alone. You are not the only woman who gave too much, who stayed too long, who mistook pain for a purpose, intensity for intimacy, silence for soul. You are part of something deeper, a hidden lineage of women who are waking up. Not just to the truth about love, but to the truth about themselves. This space was created for you, for the woman who feels too much, who questions everything, who wants to heal without performing perfection, who craves conversation that feels like medicine. Not noise. So I ask you, gently, honestly, soul to soul, what did loving the wrong man awaken in you? What did you have to lose to finally return to yourself? Share it in the comments, not as a confession, but as a liberation. Because when one woman speaks her truth out loud, it gives 1,000 others permission to stop pretending. And if you felt held here, if this video mirrored something sacred back to you, I invite you to subscribe, not for content, not for algorithms, but because this space is not just a channel. It is a refuge, a temple of remembrance, a sanctuary for the wild, wounded, rising feminine. And you belong here. You always have. Welcome home.